In this video, and possibly the next one, we're going to be talking about religion, and so I'm going to do my best not to offend anyone, and try to see things from all the perspectives as possible. This is going to be a precursor to the video that comes after this, which will be exploring the fruits of the Spirit and getting deeper into one of the best lessons that I've learned from the Judeo-Christian Bible. But yes, before that, I just want to give a couple caveats. So here we go. Psychotherapy, philosophy, and science do not have it all figured out. And new alternatives to millennia-old methods that are tried but not necessarily true, these methods are not necessarily where they need to be just yet, but they're very much more so on the right track. So what I'm not saying is that this is the only way of looking at things. As I well emphasized in previous videos, I'm trying to promote open-mindedness. Alright, listen to how I say this. We need to foster serenity in order to accept the things that we cannot change, the courage to pursue that which we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, again, notice how I phrase that. This is the serenity prayer, except I've altered it such that it reflects the ideas of the diagram I'm about to present, and the ideals behind the many emerging alternatives to Alcoholics Anonymous. The change that I made here is to emphasize that this prayer, or saying, insinuates that serenity, or this peace of mind, can only be had through God, or can only be given or blessed to us from God. And it cannot be made manifest by oneself, which it certainly can. Imagine going through life believing that you cannot achieve inner peace without an external entity blessing it upon you. In reality, this inner peace is something that must be worked on via various means, usually by putting forth individual effort. I don't like saying it this way, but this is honestly why therapy works and why prayer doesn't. Or at least prayer in regards to self-improvement and self-betterment, which is what we're focusing on in these videos here. If we're trying to improve on any situation, we need to see professionals. We don't need to hope. We need to put our faith in something. We put our faith in facts and not feelings. We need to put forth a gentle effort into fostering serenity, nurturing our peace of mind through some well-examined method, be that mindfulness meditation or deep contemplation of scripture. Though I again find myself needing to caveat awareness. Without being taught introspection, or being genetically lucky enough to have developed self-awareness early on, we won't know that we need to put forth that effort, or form a practice of establishing peace of mind in the first place. This is why mindfulness and self-awareness practices should come primary, in my opinion, and this is why I think CBT and self-regulation practices have been at the forefront of psychology and psychotherapy for like 80 years now. So sticking with the Alcoholics Anonymous example here, we would say things like, just let go and let God. And it's kind of like a psychological band-aid mentally. This whole idea of putting your worries on God, this gets problematic when we consider agency and blame. These phrases are usually used when referring to something bad happening that we can't change, to make us feel better, or when we need strength that we can call on God for encouragement. But when we fail or fall short, or sin, or remit, we are presented two choices: to blame ourselves or to blame God. And of course we can't blame the one entity we're supposed to be housing our confidence and assurances in, the one that we keep asking for all this strength, so we have to blame ourselves, and then go back to asking God to give us strength again. And it's a flip side double whammy. We also don't get to celebrate our victories when we resist and say no to offers of alcohol or drugs. Instead, we are to think, wow, God really gave me the strength on that one, or God really came through for me on that one. But we can never say something like, God really let me down on that one, because God and his infinite goodness that we inherent sinners, so very filled with sin, are meant to be imitating. Yet simultaneously calling on for help? Again, I don't mean to talk down about AA, but these are just some of the issues that we're coming up with nowadays. We're starting to notice that are arising. Instead of being able to congratulate oneself, this religion once again makes it all about itself. It keeps itself in its community, its ideology, or its God, instead of the individual, or the family, or the tribe. Now, I really don't want to get into this, but it is something that I've researched a lot now, and I've also lived a lot of this up until I was about 18 years old. This is another problematic hierarchy present in many religions worldwide, actually. This idea of prioritizing the Godhead over the family and the self, instead of putting family and all others first. Sometimes this results in exclusion from families, and sometimes this results in all-out war. But yes, there are therapeutic and secular forms of alcohol addiction treatment that emphasize method and awareness. Methods like addictive voice recognition, SMART, disarm, and Merita. And if you need help in this regard, secular AA alternatives near me is just a Google search away. Now, I'll go out on a limb here and say that the Western Holy Scriptures will only tell you the goals to pursue or the states to achieve, not how to achieve them. Rather, the main way that they insist on achieving these goals is through following this Godhead, or this one way of thinking, which inherently excludes and invalidates all other methods. Now, the Bible mentions 9 main qualities to express and pursue, mentioned as the fruit of the Spirit, which we'll explore in the next video coming up. These qualities are fundamental to living a life well lived, and representative of one who is agentially and morally forthright, one who is walking the Christ-like path, we could say. But we ultimately tend to fall short. Why? because our neurobiological restrictions and compartmentalizations will always pull us away from the mindfulness necessary to uphold those fruits of the Spirit. We have to consider the biopsychosocial relations and restrictions that influence our thinking and decision-making, and not rely wholly on a single source that doesn't physically respond. This is why we have to examine our methods of stabilization. So let's take a look at a diagram. So here we have a diagram depicting the methods of establishing life stability. This is actually a reimagining of Kane Ramsey's diagram from his CBT lesson course online, which I highly recommend. Although he didn't mention any of the religious stuff, I should just mention that. He mentions faith, but nothing like this at all. This is meant to depict the methods that people tend to use to establish agency and integrate with their life. Of course, we all unconsciously use parts of random methods at will, which inevitably causes imbalance, which is what we're trying to prevent here. But this is honestly no better than seeking no method, which is what I've depicted in image 1. No method, feelings-based, or a feelings-based method, if we were going to call it a method at all. When it comes down to it, we end up reacting off of impulse or what we feel is right in the moment. And that can work sometimes, but sometimes it can really get us into trouble. As you can see, the line is all over the place. Often we're in high places and we're in low places, and often we're affected by the world without even realizing it. So I'm depicting two different lines here. We have a green line that's representing our foundational life stability, which impacts our overall life fulfillment, and our feeling of personal agency, our ability to make decisions and act upon our decisions in the moment. So as you can see, we start off kind of random. Both of these aren't very well aligned, and then at certain parts in our lives, and early on in life, usually when we have a good support system or a family to help us out, we find a place of stability and personal agency. So we feel like we're making our own decisions, and we have most of our needs met. Our life is pretty stable because it's taken care of by others. Or to put it much more simply, if we go through life with no method, no way of dealing with anything except for our feelings, then we'll have a life of constant fluctuation. We'll be all over the place, and sometimes it'll balance out, and other times it'll be crazy. And then we have another feelings-based method that has been tried throughout the times, but is tried but not necessarily true. These can be religious-based practices, these can be pseudoscience-based practices like astrology or tarot, things that can bring us an external source of fulfillment and satisfaction and balance in life that seems like it's balancing us out, but when reality hits, when we approach the 21st century with these methods, they tend to fall short. And so what this can look like is we're going through life, got all the imbalance, and we think that we found a good method, and we're balanced out for a little while, but eventually that method starts to let us down, and then we come back, say, on Sunday, and we get refulfilled, and we're back to square one, and then it starts to fail us, and then we have to go back again for that source of fulfillment so that we can keep going. And then we have actual tried and true methods that are based in facts, that are changing with the times and not unchanging, and these are the ones that will be able to actually balance us out over time. So we'll have this going on and then we'll find actual stability. This is what modern day therapy looks like. Or at least this is what modern day therapy is trying to do. I personally think that modern day psychotherapy is still like 100 years behind. I mean, we're working with very rudimentary systems, unfortunately. We have this CBT, we have cognitive behavioral therapy, rational emotive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, and a lot of these have a lot of success in certain regards, and sometimes they don't, and we're still trying to find the right language to use with these practices, because we don't want to give people labels, we don't want to give people diagnoses unless we absolutely have to, because they can run with that, because people can latch onto those ideas as labels and identify with them, and then think of themselves as unchanging and not able to actually improve on those conditions, disorders and diagnoses, and things that could actually be seen as an advantage in certain situations. So the problem is a lot of the ancient methods that we have a lot of merit, but when we go to apply them in certain instances in today's much more fast-paced world, especially since the Protestant Revolution, since Luther, and since the mid-19th century, when we really started challenging the belief systems that we had with the science and logic. Unfortunately, a lot of these ancient methods, though they are very alluring and they do feel very good, they engage in the necessity of ritual practice, which is something that we'll talk about in the future as well, but they don't have as much merit in today's world, or at least it's harder to put the methods that are portrayed in these times in today's times. Anyways, I hope this has made sense. Please feel free to leave me any feedback if you need. I hope to see you in the next one.